Hey, good evening, everybody. I'm Donna Schneider, President of the Prince George's County Historical Society, and I welcome you to our May 22nd, 2023 History Chat, which is celebrating the county's Historic Preservation Month. We will be chatting with David Moore and Deena Rubinson about the house that they own, Clagett House at Cool Spring Manor. They will be discussing this with John Peter Thompson about their trials and tribulations of restoring one of the county's historic homes. We will be answering questions at the end, so please put any questions you may have in the chat box, and we will go ahead and get started. John Peter?
Well, thank you very much, and thank you very much, Ms. Rubinson and Mr. Moore, for joining us. I'm particularly interested in your project in this house, and I have to do my little story that over 20 years ago, when I first came to the Historic Preservation Commission, I heard about a derelict house near where I live in Upper Marlboro. And with a friend, I went to this property, and there was a derelict house up on a hill. And my friend and I said, should we trespass? Do you think we'll get arrested? And we decided in the middle of the day, nobody would notice. And we went crawling through the house, and probably wasn't the wisest thing we were doing. We also explored some of the grounds that behind. We didn't know. You're going to tell us about some of the things you discovered outside of the house, I think, which we didn't know 20 some years ago were there. And so I remember what the house looked like when nobody cared. This is a very unique house in Maryland, let alone Prince George's County. My informant who has joined us, Dr. Stabler, sent me a little information to refresh my memory. The house was built circa 1830, 1840, a 700-acre farm plantation. It was the architectural design that makes this a very unique structure. This house is designed.
We lost his audio.
Someone just said that was there.
See.
Am I still here, or am I
gone?
There you go.
Well, and that finishes my elaborate conversation. I'm just going to, I don't know what was heard and what wasn't. This is a unique architectural gem in Maryland, and certainly in Prince George's County. And I know we'll talk about the uniqueness of the design. A house that I crawled through with a friend of mine over 20 years ago. And I'm very excited to hear the story of restoring this gem of a house from the 19th century. And that's pretty much it for me. And hopefully this gives you an intro to tell us who you are and how maybe you got a hold of the house, and take us through the wonders of restoration.
All right. Well, thank you. My name's Dave. This is my wife, Deena. We first came across this house. We both grew up in Maryland. We now live part of the year in Los Angeles and back in Maryland the other parts of the year. I had grown up in the area, and my family has a farm right across the street. So I had seen this house for many, many years. In fact, I knew the people that last lived in it, I think probably back in the 80s, 90s. So it had been just an interesting piece of architecture that I drove by quite often and looked at the four chimneys and said, hey, what's going on with that house? It's very interesting. And at the time, it was buried behind trees and vines growing over it, and I wasn't even sure. And then for a long time, it wasn't inhabited. So we were always quite interested in it, and it was actually architect Siegfried Ising who mentioned, we were talking about it one day, and he had been hired to add some wings to the house because a development was on its way on that farm. They were going to build a development there with these great big houses, and to keep the consistent with the new houses, they wanted to, I think, triple the size of Clagett House. And he had been hired to do these wings of the house, and they were looking for some people to come in and partner up, perhaps with the owners. There was an owner, the Dr. Dobson was the owner of the property, and he actually owned a couple thousand acres down at Brandywine, and he's a landowner, and they were going to put a development in there. And at the time, we weren't really interested in partnering up on a house that was going to have wings, because it was not really something we were really interested in at the time. But short version of it is I became more and more interested in the house, and as did Deena, and found out that they were, that there was a mandate that the house had to be restored or maintained. And then while they were doing perk tests on the property for the development, at that point, I think it was about 185 acres, they dug up part of a skeleton out back in one of the fields, a skull and part of a torso. Actually, Jennifer Stabler knows a lot about this. I see she's on here. They at the time, so they said, whoa, they stopped everything to find out. They actually brought in homicide to see if it was a current skeleton, what was going on. And so we found out that, and then of course they sent the body actually to the Smithsonian to see what was going on with it. And it turned out that it was an African-American skeleton from the 1800s, probably from mid 1800s. And they came out and did a survey of it and found out there were at least another 14 graves in this area. And there's also, as a point of reference, a family cemetery in the woods just out much closer to the house. And there was lots of evidence of perhaps other houses, residences for right near the African-American cemetery. So it may have been slaves, but at the time that the house was built in the 1830s, I believe there were about 40, give or take, slaves owned by on the property. So it was an operating plantation, obviously more consistent with something of the Deep South, like the architecture, which is a Greek Revival architecture. That house, as you said, it's a unique form in Maryland, much more consistent with houses down in Louisiana, South Carolina. We've seen lots of examples there. So anyway, and forgive me if I'm rambling, but and then an interesting thing happened. This was about 2008 when we had the financial crash, and so the neighborhood stopped. We were happy because our farm was right across the street, and Michael T. Rose, I think, died. The developer, Michael Rose, was the developer, and he died also at around the time. So Dr. Dobson was getting older, and I think at that point was, saying, okay, they're not going to do the development. He wanted to settle his estate. He had this slave cemetery. He had this old house, so he was letting the house kind of fall apart. It wasn't his thing. He just was a developer. He didn't want to deal with the house. And so I think that he wanted to, we started communicating. I said, I really love this old house. And at that point, I found out there wasn't going to be a neighborhood, and that also that that opened up the opportunity that the house could be restored to its original condition instead of adding wings. And that was something that piqued our interest. And the Historic Preservation Commission was interested in creating a significant view shed for the property. And it was, in discussions anywhere from 5 to 25 acres at one point, to be carved out of the 185-acre farm. And that was very interesting to us. And that it would be, it could be a nice piece of property with an original historic house. So we, but the house was falling down, and it was upsetting for us to see. So actually, with Dr. Dobson's permission, we ran out there before we owned the house and rolled a temporary roof over it because water was pouring inside the house. So we ran over there and sealed up the roof because we were very, we didn't want to see the house go. So we did that one day, and then Dr. Dobson, I think, wanted to settle his estates. He wanted to not leave this to his heirs, this trouble of over this, and he was having difficulty with the Historic Preservation Commission, who was hitting him with demolition by neglect. So he was motivated to say, this is a headache for him. And he wanted to put the property, the rest of the acreage, into preservation. So we brokered the deal in the back of a white Lincoln Continental in a snowstorm. It all happened very fast, but we got in the back of a car and shook hands. It was very interesting. So we were at that point. We worked closely with Fred Statura and some other folks over with the Maryland National Capital Park and Planning and Historic Preservation, and kind of developed a plan for it, saying, we wanted to preserve the house as it was in its original form, with a front porch, a back porch, and its original footprint. Just began working with the commission to sort of develop a plan that we all could be happy with and that made sense. And Dr. Dobson was happy to, he was motivated to sell, so we were able to, get the property, and the commission designated 10 acres around the property, and then the rest of the 185 was put into preservation, which is terrific. So it really is a nice setting for this house, up on a hill, and surrounded by some land, and it's farmland. It continues to be farmed. So that was, did I forget anything? I
think you're doing a great job. That's how I remember it.
And so we once we got the property, then it's just sort of, when we first walked through it, Deena has, when it first fell, Deena, go ahead. With the story, when we were first walking through the property, I fell through the floorboards from the first floor and caught myself on a floor joist.
Yeah.
So
the
wood
was so spongy from water damage that you just didn't know where it was going to actually hold up. So
yeah,
we got lucky that he was over.
I was over a joist, so I split myself on a joist. But it was unfortunately, I think a lot of damage occurred on that house in the, I would say, 18 months to 2 years prior to us acquiring it. And it's unfortunate. So some things were lost inside that, we just couldn't retrieve. But there was a portion up front in the main hall where that was the area that was really affected by the water damage. But there's so many parts of the house that were still original, and that's actually one of the greatest things about it. Nobody came in and remodeled it. It was still in its form, except for some things they would they put a kitchen in the hallway, things like that, just to kind of live in it. But the windows were original. The walls, the so much about it was exciting from a preservation standpoint.
Mr. Moore, could you briefly describe the envelope, the overall structure that makes this typical of the Gulf Coast, the Deep South, but not here? And I'm referring to when I crawled through this. Fortunately, it was 8 years before you fell through. The house is, the living quarters are kind of in the ground, right? And then there's, well, I'll let you describe it.
Yeah, it's a high basement, really, which is, it's not, I don't think it's really accurate to say it's necessarily a basement because it was living area, but it's about the first floor, which we call the first floor, which is essentially, some people call it the basement, is about 4 feet, 4.5 feet below grade. And then the rest of it is above grade with the main floor elevated. So there are 2 porches on the main floor, which are about 4.5, 5 feet off of grade. So and what that is, why it's consistent with something further, is just, it's a way to keep the house cool. It is always warmer in the winter down there. You can go down in the coldest day and it's, 25 degrees warmer in the basement, and the same thing during the summer. If it's 100 degrees outside, it's 75 down in the lower floor. So that's really nice. And then the main hall is open with transom lights over the doors, large and with huge windows that allow a lot of ventilation through from north to south and south to north in the main hallway. And then the shape of the house and the orientation on the hill is it's a solar to take advantage of with the deep porches that are about 12 feet deep. During the summer, there's no porch from the east and west. So in the mornings, as the sun comes up, there's light that comes directly into both floors. And it's quite bright, and the lighting is lovely. And then as the sun goes across the sky during the summer, the porches are shadowed because of the angle of the sun, and no direct sunlight comes in through the windows on the south side. So it keeps the house fairly cool. And then again at sunset, the light starts coming back through the windows again on both the upper and lower floors. And so that same concept being in the winter, being the sun lower, more light does come through, and light does actually come through the south windows and in the main living area underneath the porches. So the angle of the sun. So somebody was really thinking about it, and it's sort of a early solar house, just the way it was designed. But it keeps it cool during the summer.
I have, that's a great description. I think for the audience and for me specifically, so now you own this house where you walk in and fall through the floor. How does one go about determining, besides putting something on top of the roof, where to start? I mean, did you have to get consultants in besides the commission? How does one decide where to start on a project this large?
Well, I think we triaged.
It
was pretty obvious that we had to shore up the roof because there was so much water damage. So that's where we started.
Yeah.
We were just trying to save whatever we could. So at the beginning, it was a little easier because things were falling apart. So we just
yeah,
we just did what we had to do to save the house, pretty much step by step.
Yeah, we have some architect friends who came in and gave us lots of good advice. Siegfried Easing is a historic preservation architect. He came in, gave us some good advice. We both have lots of experience working in preservation of houses. I'm a contractor. One of my specialties is historic restoration and preservation. Yeah, it's funny because most houses you build from the bottom up. We started working from the top down, unfortunately. So we had to kind of hold things up sometimes while we were rebuilding things, so the whole house would stay up while we supported walls and framing and things like that. But I think Deena's right. It was an active triage to find out what could be done first to stabilize the house. So I would say the first couple of years were just stabilizing the house, and then once we felt like, okay, it's not going backwards, we closed it up, where do we begin? What can be saved? What can't be saved? What needs to be replicated? And you know, and with that, you know, the walls are the lower floor walls are all brick. So I didn't really say that. So this lower floor that goes 5 feet above grade is all brick, and that's a 5-1 American bond for any masonry geeks out there. And it's all lime mortar with oyster shells mixed in with it. So we did lots of analysis on that, of course, to match the mortar, lime mortar on the house. And the walls are about 13 inches thick, which is basically a, you know, one brick this way, then another brick that way, and you end up with about 13 inches. You know, if you put 3 bricks together or turn one sideways, you get about 13-inch wall. So the walls are that come up about 5 feet above grade are all brick. So we repointed and restored the foundation was one of the first things we did to get, you know, a solid structure there that wasn't popping. There were a lot of bricks, but we used reclaimed brick. Actually, there was still brick around the property. You know, we picked up lots and lots of bricks that had fallen or whatever, so we collected lots of bricks. But we used reclaimed brick, antique brick from Maryland, which all matches the same size and shape. You know, the older style bricks are slightly larger than contemporary brick. So that we found a good supplier for that, and had our mortar formula made up, and you know, we just went about securing the foundation, and then from a design standpoint,
Sister to a lot of those buildings.
yeah, a lot of like the
hip structure on the roof.
oh yeah, the roof structure, just re-supporting the roof structure, but kind of just saving what was there, replacing what we could, and building up. We replaced where we had to in the walls, or we sistered a lot between a lot of the studs in the walls. What else? And then, you know, replace whatever siding and things like that. So that's where we were.
What's the roof covering? Is it metal seam? I've forgotten.
Cedar shingle.
Cedar shingle. And you mentioned, because it's quite noticeable, even when I saw it in derelict form, the 4 chimneys, because from the road, it looked, for a lay person, it looks a little weird. The chimneys look like they're inside the house instead of where I guess I expected them to be along the side.
Yeah, well, that's correct. There are 4 chimneys, 6 fireplaces. The 2 south chimneys service a bedroom on the main floor and the parlor. The north 2 chimneys actually have 2 flues each. So and they service the you know, a second parlor, upstairs parlor, and another bedroom, as well as the downstairs living room. There was like a summer room or a summer bedroom downstairs, so there's a fireplace there and a fireplace in what was the kitchen downstairs. And we have restored all of the fireplaces in the house, and the chimney and the brickwork, and, you know, from inside out and outside in, but all of the chimneys are now restored and the fireplaces are all working. You know, we had to do a lot of steel reinforcement inside those chimneys. You know, just like a new lintel, you know, nothing like, you know, we didn't line it with anything, just parged on the inside of them. But yeah, you know, new steel lintels where it needed be. You know, that's what I was just going to say, was that from a design standpoint, and Deena may talk about this, is that in how we laid out the house, we decided to put there were no bathrooms in the house, you know, right? You know, so like they had like an outhouse and so forth, but we are dealing with, you know, trying to coordinate that. But the main design choice, quandary for us, was where to put the kitchen, because it kept wanting to be, you know, in one way it said, oh, we should put it upstairs in what was one of the bedrooms, and it would be this living space and the bright and so forth. and it just never stuck. No matter how much time we went through 20 designs, and ultimately we're the kitchen is now back where it was, in 1830, with what is a pantry and what was the kitchen, which would have been obviously tended to by slaves on the property. That downstairs, which was a separate entrance, is where the kitchen and main dining area for us is now designed into it, and it's really interesting. It has a huge fireplace. I don't know if there's any photographs, but there's a fireplace that there's a photo somewhere, it may or may not come up, but of my son standing in the fireplace. That's how big the fireplace is, which is going to be where the kitchen dining room is area. So I don't know if I've said that correctly. Have I said that?
Let me see if I can find the photo. Hold on.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the interesting points of restoring an old house is that
Yeah.
when you're looking towards restoring it, but also looking towards living in it, there's this constant push and pull between modern life and restoring the house, and where you give into that, right? Because I like to cook, we like to have dinner parties, so I really wanted a nice big kitchen, and the kitchen area that they would have used was really small because, as he said, there was a pass through to a pantry, and you would have had slaves who were working all in these different rooms. So the actual kitchen area was pretty small. But every time we tried to make it in one of the bigger rooms, the house just didn't want it. I don't know of a better way to say it. We kept really trying to force it, and it just wouldn't work. So we finally just went, we'll have a smaller kitchen because that's what the house wants.
But it has this has brick floors, and the walls are plastered, and there's brick fireplaces, and so it has this really great. We embraced the sort of, we called it the Belgian wine cellar. We wanted it to have this warm feeling that is inviting. Like these European bars and pubs where you walk down, or like up in the Northeast, where you walk down to go to the pub underneath the city, and it can be a very warm and inviting place. It doesn't have to feel like a dungeon. So we've really embraced that feel. And one of the biggest projects we did was, and there might be another photo if it can pop up, is of the area going down had been into the lower floor. There's an exterior entrance that goes under the porches, under a north porch that goes to to what would have been the kitchen, which is now going to be the kitchen and dining area.
Is that it? Can you see the photo?
Yeah. Okay. So that's after we restored it. And there's one there that kind of shows where it's filled in. That whole area had been filled in by dirt and brick over the years. And so that entrance was only about 4.5, 5 feet. You had to kind of crawl, duck to get down into that entrance.
I think that's the entrance that my friend and I came through.
Yeah. So it's you probably had to kind of sneak in.
Kind of sneak in. Yep.
Yep.
Do you have that picture of the original?
There's a before picture there. If you can, it's kind of filled in with dirt. It's not from the exact same angle, but
the other angle, yeah.
Is that this one?
Let's see if it pops up here. It hasn't come up yet. Yep, that's it. You see how it's been filled in there, right? So, and over the years, now that we dug that out for several feet down, and then taking almost very close to what was an original dimension, so forth. But we opened that up and kind of created a new, very, very, we felt an inviting entrance to this lower floor, so that, if we're going to use it as our kitchen and dining area, and it's going to be a place where we come and go at least 50% of the time, we felt that was okay. Let's make this, let's not think of this as a compromise, but as an invitation to restore this part of the house and make it as grand as any other part of the house. So that entrance now, it's interesting, that area that you see on the screen is now one of the big hangouts. So everybody, because it's cool, it's 10 degrees cooler down in that little area, and it's a nice little sitting area and a nice place to hang out in or out of the house. So that was a big design choice. So it was, not that we can take credit for anything, because that's how it was already designed, but it was a choice that we had to make to go ahead and embrace the original floor plan of the house and try to still bring it up to contemporary living standards, and whether it can be a functional kitchen that we can use. So that's actually a fun aspect of it. So that was a big design choice, answering your question about, where did you begin? So I guess after stabilizing, the next step was deciding what is the house, how's the house going to function? What is what room is where, what's going to be, what room is going to serve what. So that photo that just came up here was actually, that's one of the fireplaces, which is going to be the primary bedroom downstairs, which could have been a summer living room, perhaps a bedroom. It's cool down there. That fireplace had been bricked over with some contemporary brick and was a big mess, and but was structural, and you can see the ridge. So that's mostly that. So what we did was we took antique brick that we had on site and rebuilt something that was very consistent with the rest of the house. So that was during construction. That's not complete, but that was during it. So yeah, and then one of the biggest projects on the house was the windows.
That's where I was going next.
Yeah, that was a very big project. That there are these beautiful windows on the house. I mean, I think they're, if I remember correctly, about 40 inches wide by about 72 inches tall on the upper floor. So there are these 4 large windows on the south side and 4 on the north, and then 2 on the east and west. But they're very large and a very important architectural feature on the house. And then on the lower floor, there are smaller version of the same thing on the lower floor. So what we did was we removed all the windows from the house and took them over into the shop. My parents have a shop. My father was a great woodworker and had a great shop set up there on our farm. So to be honest, I don't think we could have done it without my parents and their farm over there have been very generous in helping us have a place just to have people and resources and tools and shuttling back and forth, but it made it possible. So we took all the windows out, took an inventory of what we had, and we were, and then on the window jambs and sills, few of them were rotted beyond repair, couldn't be bondoed or fiberglassed. So what we did was there was a fallen barn on the property, and we needed these sills are this. I mean, they're 4.5 by 12 inches. These sills are gigantic. So we used some of the old from the fallen barn. We went and grabbed some of the old beams out of the barn and built a lot of those used a lot of the big timbers to build the window sills for the house. But I would say only about 30, maybe 30% of the sills had to be replaced, particularly on the lower floor east-west, because again, they weren't as protected by the porches, right? On the lower floor, they're very vulnerable out there. So we replaced those, and then with the windows, we were able to, by replacing just pieces, mill them. We made or bought or built the router bits and the jigs and the forms to all match perfectly. And sometimes it would require 3 or 4 passes to create the old profile for the window muntins and rails and stiles. So we in the shop, we set about replicating the original windows parts, and then we were able to save, I'd say, 65–70% of the windows that were original, and then replicated the rest. on the house, and you can't really tell the difference, other than they look a little better. But then we went through and a lot of Bondo and sanding and cleaning of all the parts of the windows. And then something else.
And we categorized all the glass.
Yeah, you want to talk about categorizing glass?
You can talk about it.
Okay, I talk a lot. We took the glass, and actually it was my sister, I think she's online here today, Elaine. She helped us categorize all the pieces of glass. We took all the glass out of the house and inventoried it and by age. And I would say there was definitely some 1830s glass in there. And we managed to salvage enough, I'd say from 1830s to 1920s glass in the house. We were able to save it, and then we installed all of it on the lower floor. So there was enough that all of the lower floor in the house is original glass from, like I said, 1830s to 1920s, I'm guessing. And it's wavy, and there's various thicknesses because of the, that's a long time during that. But and then on the upper floor, we found a place out of Baltimore that does replica glass, where they take contemporary glass, heat it up, and it goes wavy. And so there are different grades of how wavy you want it. If you want it to look like 1630s glass, you can, and they make it real wavy. It looks like like a Coke bottle, like it's been blown. Or you can, and so we picked the amount of waviness that would be appropriate for 1830s. So the whole upper floor, when you see the house now, has this wavy glass, and it looks original. So when you see the house, all that, it as close as we could make it to what was original on that. And then,
I have a window question. With these large windows, did the house have storm windows? I don't remember. In the South, they would have had, the wood, you draw the windows closed when the hurricane came. This house didn't have that, did it?
That's correct. It had shutters, exterior shutters. So what we did is we found there were some, during an inventory on the property, there was some photographs of some original shutter designs that may or may not have been, they found them in the barn, but they were just, sort of your typical Southern louvered shutter there. Those were all replicated. So those are not original shutters, but the hardware that's hand forged hardware on there. And I got that out of a place, I think in Pennsylvania. I don't have it in front of me right now, but that's forged hardware. And the shutters were replicated to fit the house. And so those are the kind of shutters that slide up, you just lift them up and they come off. And a really interesting thing is that the locks for those windows, I have never seen them anywhere else ever in all my restoring job. And and my father, who was an engineer, we found one that worked. Couple of the locks that were still there in the windows, most of them were destroyed, but we found one that was complete. And it's this a little lock about, as I remember, maybe 1.5 inches, maybe 2 inches by 1.5. That's a push button, a spring load.
Wow.
And it fits in the jamb of the window. So it fits in the jamb of the window. And there are little notches cut out of the sash itself that are hidden by the window stop. So when you push that button in, you can lift up the window and release it, and it's on a spring load, and the little thing pops back out and goes into one of the detents in the window. So you can have the window locked in a closed position, middle, or all the way up. And so my father found he had lots of connections with machine shops, so we had them fabricate all of them in brass. So we have these really, really cool replica brass window locks that are still going to go into the house, and they're really terrific. And for the shutters, the hardware, there was, again, I had only seen similar things, but clearly they made them just for this house. When the shutters close, there's a little piece of iron that goes across, a little steel thing that you I know this is geeky, I'm sorry, but you
No,
push.
that's the whole point of tonight.
Right, right.
Geeky.
So the shutters close and it has a little latch on the back of the shutter, right? Down at the bottom. And you push this little, I wish I had probably had a picture of that, but you push this little lever arm down and it releases the latch on the back of the shutter. So when you want to close the shutters during a storm, you just swing them and the little latch is at a slight angle. So you can actually close them from the outside. It hits this little lever arm, goes down, detents, and locks the whole shutters closed from the outside. So if you want to open them up, you can go on the inside, push this button, and then you can open up the shutters again. And it's just a little clearly forged a little arm that attaches to the sill, and it's just kind of spring loaded because of the nature of the metal. And so we replicated those as well. So we have all these little arms and all these little blocks to lock the windows shut. So that was a really, really fun project. And my father, he was great with that because, you know, he was an engineer with mechanical drawings, and just he took the project, and so we have all of those, you know, going into the house. So that's a fun detail.
These are amazing details, and I'm thinking to myself that I have to keep reminding myself this is a house designed and built by 1840, and yet it sounds like we're describing sort of a modern house minus the little Alexa box. So I have another question about, so when I crawled through there, the floors were not in great shape, but I didn't fall through. How much of the interior floors are still original? And of course, historic preservation doesn't really stick its nose to the inside of houses, but I understand that you all are doing to the inside as much as you've done to the outside as part of this conversation is brought up. What about the state of the floors?
The upper floor, what we did was we had to do a lot of we had some powder post damage, beetle damage. So we had to help reinforce some of the joists, you know, sistering and so forth. But we took out most of the floorboards on the upper floor and saved them. And there was just no other way. And some of the upper floor was really significantly sagged. So trying to get it structurally back to where it needed to be solid. So the intention is to, but then on the lower floor is, there was a lot of evidence. Of course, when we got it, it was just dirt and concrete, you know, like a slurry poured down there, parts of it. But there was definitely, and about half of the lower floor was a brick floor. So we're in the process of, after, you know, we took all the bricks out and saved them, you know, have you know, now waterproof the lower floor and, you know, have a new good slab down there, et cetera. So those bricks are going back in on the lower floor on what would be the hall and the kitchen and dining area downstairs. But there was evidence that the living space down there was wood. So we're going to honor that and use as much of the original floorboards as possible. And then upstairs, anything that we need to make up, we'll use reclaimed they're all heart pine.
That's what I was going to ask.
Yeah, we have some beautiful 17-foot plus boards so there were no butt joints in parts of the house. So it's you know, these beautiful long boards. So we're going to preserve as much of that as we can. I mean, every last board we can get back in the house, we will. So yeah, and then the lower floor will be so the lower floor will be half brick, half wood, and upstairs will be all wood floor.
This is pretty amazing. We're waiting for when you finish, you know, then to invite the pesky Historic Preservation Commission over to see what you've done.
Yeah, you know, and you know, I mean, everybody's been pretty great. I mean, you know, they've all, with the Historic Preservation Commission, you know, they've communicated well, and, you know, they raise an eyebrow if we, you know, want something, but it's been good communication. And, you know, there were some, you know, Jennifer Stabler, who's with archaeology, came on very early and was just so helpful with us to sort of define parameters about what was appropriate, what's not, but also just to communicate and say, okay, here's what you need to do in order to proceed, right? And that was very helpful for us and guided us through. And the same thing with, I don't know if, I think Fred Statura is still in these circles, you know, and he was great with that. So there's having some folks that realize that our intentions were good, and let's all get on the same team. So and they've been helpful with some grant money, and that's been terrific. And so it's kind of been a really very positive experience for us for the most part. I mean, and I want to talk about the reinterment thing, because I think that's a really interesting thing, because talking about the positive energy and community. But you know, the only thing, it's just taken so long. It's killing us. And everybody says, when are you gonna be done? And we feel like every time we work on the house, it's just taking all this money, and we go and we just stick it in the ground and then walk away. You know, nothing happens. And it's just like, we're working, I swear. We're trying, but that's
a lot to do.
It's a lot to do, and if you want to do it right, you know, and we haven't gotten lost in details, honestly. It's just, you know, I think anybody who's ever had a historic house is laughing at us, because, you know, and we've done it with houses out here and so forth. But yeah, that's the only thing that's been a source of frustration. But, you know, family and friends have been terrifically supportive, and we have some great local crew people there, have just been really generous with their giving us, you know, such heartfelt help with the whole thing, and working on the project for a long time. And you know, we've had crew come in from all over the country to work on the project. You know, a lot of contacts we have out in California and all over the country. So that's been a really, really exciting and positive experience for that. And then one of the other projects, and I'll let you talk about this because I talk too much, but you know, when that body had been dug up way back at the very beginning, my sister knew some folks in the county, and she found out where that body was. And it was at the Smithsonian. She knew, she was friends with the original homicide detectives who came out and actually exhumed the body and found it. And so she was able to find out where it was. And then we set about finding a way to get it back so we could reinter it back in the cemetery. And everybody, you know, donated a coffin, and my father took the backhoe, went out and dug the hole, the grave, and, you know, somebody donated a tent, and everybody just contributed a lot. And I don't know if you want to talk about what that turned into.
Yeah, well, Elaine, Dave's sister, who's here right now, had kind of put it out across her police channels that that we were going to do this. We invited the community, and we figured, you know, we'd have 10 or 12 people there, and we'd give them waters and a tour of the house. So we had a case of water, and it turned, I don't know, we had like 200 people there or something. We were a little overwhelmed.
Yeah, we were a little
keep up with the tours, but it was wonderful. It was like the whole community just came out and were so wonderfully supportive, and it kind of really helped bolster us in what we were doing, that, you know, the community was on board with us, and there were people to whom I think the property really meant a lot, and it meant a lot that we were doing this and trying to restore it. So it was a really wonderful experience. Yeah,
and that was great, and people came in from all over the place for that, surprisingly, for that. So it was a nice event. It turned out to be
and the
great.
First time we met a lot of the people in the community who we didn't know up until then, so it was really nice. And
another fun thing is that, you know, whenever we're working on the house and people come by and they see us doing something or other, and we get visitors popping up, and you know, we had the owner of there's a house called the across the street on the south side of Clagett Landing Road. That was part of the original plantation. And that, the owner of that house came over, and that house was built in around 1840, 1850. And then, so we always get these folks who come in and say, oh, my grandmother used to come to visit this house when she was a little girl, 80, 90 years ago. And so it's fun just to have people coming in and visiting, telling us the stories. And then one day, a woman showed up who had been exploring her family history. And she's
from Louisiana, right?
all of her family was from Louisiana. And she had been living in Washington at the time, but state. She came in and said, I have papers here that show my ancestors were sold from this property.
Wow.
And sure enough, they were, and I looked, and you could see the selling of slaves shortly after the house had been built. I think it was right 1840s, 1850s, and they were all sold down to Louisiana. And that's where all of her relatives now are. She says, well, that's all my family lives in Louisiana. And it showed it right there in a sort of a bill of sale. And she was, quite moved to be back there, because clearly her ancestors probably had built the house. And one of an interesting thing was, while we were reclaiming a lot of the brick, we found a particular brick on the lower floor that had a handprint in it. And there it is. If you look up there where it says in the corner, I don't know if you see that brick, that's the actual brick. You see it? I don't know if everybody's up, but it's coming up under Moore.
Yeah.
So it's my sister's holding that brick up for you to see if you can see it. I don't know if you can see Ann Moore.
No, we can't see it.
Okay.
Oh.
Well, I don't know if you can scroll through. I don't know if she can come up. I don't know. Anyway, but somebody's holding up a brick there that has fingerprints in it, and you can see that it was picked up. So that those fingerprints could have been this woman's ancestors, because who knows? But it's speculation. But a lot of those bricks would have been built probably on site or close by, and most likely by slaves, and the timeline fit for her family to have been part of the building of the house. And we thought that was very interesting, and she was touched, and we shared an interesting moment of a shared history there with the brick in the house. And
we have a picture of her with her hands in the brick. That, who knows, maybe it was one of her ancestors' fingerprints. We don't even know that, but it's I have a picture of that. I should have sent it.
Yeah, but anyway, there's really, lots of things like that where
really moving to us.
Yeah, so there's and
I'm gonna have to stop you, sorry, because we're getting close to the end of the time, but I did want to show the two pictures of the house that you sent me. So let me show you early picture of the house, I believe.
Yep.
Okay, so you can sort of see I guess you have stacks of bricks. When was this in your restoration process?
Pretty early on. Yeah, it was pretty early on.
So those are the temporary. Is that just temporary staircase though?
Yeah. That was just like a construction staircase there. But yeah, that was very early on.
Okay, and then let me find the other one. And this is, I'm assuming, a more recent picture.
Yeah. So you can see the high brick first floor, clapboard siding. It's on the north side is a porch, and it's duplicate side dimensions on the south. The entrances are a little different on the north and south to accommodate the lower floor entrance to what is the kitchen, but they're very similar in dimension. Porches, you can see there's 4 chimneys there. They're interior, as you had mentioned, and again, those service a total of 6 fireplaces inside. What else? Yeah, and you can see the windows and the shutters are there. That's after the window and shutter restoration. on the house. So it's coming along, and we're getting there. You know, it's hopefully within the next couple of years, we'll be able to invite you out to see it.
Maybe.
Well, we
stay-
definitely look forward to that. So we do have a couple of questions. So let me scroll through here. Okay, so Franklin Robinson has said, amazing work and a beautiful job. So how did you work in the bathrooms? Sorry if you covered this and I missed it.
We're working in the bathroom sort of by basically the lower, taking what would have been we think what was a service pantry on the lower floor. There's it sort of requires a tour, but there's a pantry where the food would have certainly have been stored, and there was a pass through to a small room, which is where I'm sure the servants of the house plated the food and then took it upstairs. And that room is going to be a bathroom, so it's sort of just the original, just repurposing the room instead of it being there for slaves plating dishes. It'll now be a bathroom, laundry room. There's another larger room downstairs, which will become the primary bathroom, off of what is sort of now the primary bedroom. And then upstairs, the only changes at all, we took a little bit what were basically, we relocated 2 closets upstairs and moved those into the bedrooms, and just relocated the closets so that there could be a bathroom on the upper floor, smaller bathroom, but something that could be used on the upper floor. So we worked those into the interior footprint of the house so that with minimal wall movement, and certainly not eliminating a bedroom or a parlor or a hallway on the upper floor, but basically by moving a couple of closets around, we were able to squeeze in a bathroom upstairs.
Great. Alan Verda asked, has any recent research revealed Clagett's inspiration for the design of the house? A visit to the Deep South, just seeing drawings of such houses? Just, those were questions.
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I know that I should read back. It's been a while since I've read through, but the Clagett family had been around there for a while, but I know they had connections to the South. So I don't know a specific answer to that, other than I have seen a number of houses, like I said, in South Carolina and Louisiana, photographs of that. So I would say maybe they were visiting there, but I'll look into that and find out if there's a specific answer for you. Sorry.
Okay. And then the last comment is from Sherry Thompson, where she says, the house looks beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
So I don't see any other questions. John Peter, did you have something else?
No, I'm without words, and like Alan, I have more questions now about the Clagetts, and he must have gone south. I mean, he didn't open a book and see this, and I'm really interested in the window locks and these kind of, what you said, sort of geeky things that, wow, how many other people had this kind of high-tech stuff for shutters and windows?
Yeah. Another
questions now.
Just one other little geeky thing I thought was fun was that when I was up in the rafters working early on, I found a wood stamp with the initials of the I believe it was, I can't remember, it was, WDC, which was William Diggs Clagett. I think I got that right.
Yeah.
Who built the house. And it was carved in it. So when they came, they got some of the lumber from a lumber yard and they had stamped the wood for him. And I thought that was really interesting. So it was something that had been carved from a lumber yard for him. And a lot of the timber came from the property. It's mostly oak and poplar.
Right. Well, he had a 600 to 700 acre plantation farm.
Yeah, originally
I-
it was originally from a land patent from the 1658, I believe, for 1,050 acres. And so that's how big the original, and it went all the way down to the Patuxent. So you know, it was a large piece of land, and then of course over the time it was divided down.
Well, I want to thank both of you for the work that you're doing on restoring this house and for taking the time to share with the society and the audience this amazing work of love and the detail and care that you're putting in. I thank you so much for taking time to share with us.
Sure, we're happy.
Thank you.
And so Franklin
Yeah.
Robinson, who made the comment about the bathrooms, said, nice and sounds very logical, and thanks for your answer.
Oh, great. Good.
We have an offer. We have an offer of bricks on there.
Yeah, somebody's offering
Yeah.
us some bricks, so we'll be contacting you. We always need more bricks.
Always, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
But,
okay. Well,
and-
thank you, David and Deena, for joining us this evening and talking about your labor of love, I think it is. And like John Peter says, we can't wait to see it when you're all done. So we look forward to that invitation.
All right.
So we thank everybody for joining us this evening. And if you're a member, again, thank you for being a member for the Historical Society. And if you're not, please consider becoming one. The Society is an all-volunteer, all-donation nonprofit that supports the Frederick S. DeMar Library of County History in Greenbelt and provides events such as tonight's chat. We appreciate any support you can provide to assist in keeping things like these chats and the history and the library, free and accessible to the public. Please visit our website to become a member or make a donation. This chat will be up on our YouTube channel, which you can get through our website, which is www.pghistory.org. Our next history chat is Monday, June 26th with Lee Ryan, who'll be chatting with Jenny Masur to talk about her new book, Maryland Freedom Seekers on the Underground Railroad. So that's all we have for this evening, and I'd like to thank everybody again. Good night.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.